If you wondered where I was last week, I had no internet. As of recording this, I still have no internet. I hope that changes soon, but let's just get right into the video. Neuvillette has been out for only a little over a week, and in that short amount of time, goddamn have I really fallen in love with this character. I had pretty high expectations, and somehow he even exceeded those. Now I'm the kind of person that I get pretty excited for almost every single new character that comes out, as long as they're a 5-star, because let's be honest, unless a 4-star has a crit damage C6 that buffs an element, they haven't exactly been the most exciting lately. Now you know people love them, and that's great if they're for you, but I really haven't enjoyed them. 5-stars, however, rarely disappoint me. You know, there's only been a few examples. You know, Albedo on his release before he ever got the Cinnabar Spindle or the Husk set. Dia, because I don't need to explain that one. I'm honestly struggling to even think of a third one, but characters I'm really excited for, those are a little bit more memorable to me. Notable ones for me that were my favorites at some point in time are Ganyu when she was first released, because she was insane back then, Itto, Yelan, Cyno, Wanderer, and now Neuvillette. Now in some ways these characters might seem kind of scattered, but in one way or another they are all connected to each other. They all have something in common that is something that I really appreciate in a character. Except for Cyno, he's actually kind of the odd one out. Reason number 1, Neuvillette is not beholden to auto-aim, and I have made my distaste and hatred for the auto-aim system in this game very, very public. When a character like Diluc or Venti can be actually hurt by auto-aim, it makes me a lot less likely to actually want to play them. It's also why I liked Ganyu so much on her release. She was completely free from auto-aim, not only free from it, but she could also benefit from, you know, being able to aim exactly where she wanted, maximizing the amount of targets that could be hit by her charge attack. It's a lot different than a character like Yoimiya or Wanderer who get benefit from auto-aim, you know, never missing, but it's not the same as a character like Itto who without auto-aim could actually hit more targets with his charge attack in some cases. Reason 2, another thing that he shares with Ganyu is the fact that he relies on no major cooldowns to actually deal his damage. While Neuvillette's charge attack may not be the fastest thing in the world without the help of his elemental skill, the skill is still on a pretty low cooldown, allowing him to beam pretty much anything in the overworld without ever having to charge. But even in the cases where you do have to charge, it's really not that bad. Sure, it takes a lot of time, but it really does a lot of damage. It's a big step up from a unit like Cyno or Itto, where they rely on their burst to do their real damage, so when you use them in the overworld where you're doing a lot of small fights that are spaced out, they can feel really bad to use. Reason number 3 is just how flexible Neuvillette can be in just about any overworld or combat situation. Since he's not beholden to the auto aim and you can name that beam anywhere you want in 360 degrees and even up and down a little bit, he can pretty much clear any camp of monsters just by himself with one single beam. It is also incredibly satisfying to line up everything just right and just beam them all down. Reason 4 is a very simple one and also something that is incredibly unique in Genshin right now. He is a DPS that is able to completely sustain his own HP without the help of anyone else. Now this is definitely more applicable in the overworld than it is in something like the Abyss. In the Abyss, if you don't have another healer or shielder, it is possible that you might take a little bit too much damage. But in the overworld, he is easily able to sustain his own HP with the help of his burst and his skill in absorbing those orbs. Now we also have Linny who was able to do this, but honestly, he doesn't scale with HP, so his health pool isn't that big to begin with, and when he's hurting himself, it's very easy for mobs to kill him. The ability to self-sustain between Neuvillette and Linny are just night and day. I honestly just hope we get more characters like this because self-sustaining bruisers are some of my favorite characters in games. Reason number 5, his Constellation 1 not only makes his team building a lot easier to do, but surprisingly the interruption resistance that this thing gives is insane. I have not seen one thing in this game yet actually interrupt him while he's in his C1, which is fantastic because that means you don't need a shielder if you have C1 necessarily. Nothing is going to interrupt you while you're charging or firing your beam unless you get something like frozen and CC'd. Now what this does is it allows me to run him with Yelan, give him the Hydra Resonance, give him HP from my Yelan C4, which I know not a lot of people are going to have, but I have it, and I love any reason to use Yelan because before Neuvillette, she was my favorite character, and honestly, they are so neck and neck. Honestly, it might switch back and forth as time goes on, but I love Yelan, I love Neuvillette, I love using them together. Even if they don't necessarily have the best of synergy, they do still have some, but it's expensive synergy. And if you're confused, C4 means that she's going to give him a ton of HP, she's also giving him the Hydra Resonance, and she's giving him a generic damage percent bonus that her passive gives. Reason number 6, unlike Yelan, I actually like Neuvillette's personality. And one of the reasons I like Neuvillette so much and Farina is because of their interactions together. They play off each other so well, and I just really hope to see more of their dynamic as Fontaine progresses. Even though it is a little bit hard to imagine Neuvillette ever taking part in an event in the future, like a really silly event, I just can't imagine him in that situation. Reason number 7, speaking of events. Now, there's nothing to go off right now other than like a daily quest, but I feel like Neuvillette's beam at some point in time is going to be really good for an event or various kinds of puzzles in the game. There's already a couple fun situations where anytime you would need to be using a bow character, you can just use Neuvillette's beam and spin around and like blow up a bunch of barrels or shoot a bunch of balloons like in this daily quest in Fontaine. It's a very small thing, but to me it's really fun to, you know, just cheese these puzzles or quests or whatever with a character like this that, you know, it's not needed, but it's fun to do it. Reason number 8. Now I touched on this a little bit before, but overworld application. Not only is he good at surviving the world by himself with his own healing and killing every camp by himself with an incredibly efficient beam, but he's also got useful things with exploration. Now, while hovering over water with his charge attack may not be the most useful thing in the world, it is still something that he can do. So not only can I cross a river, but I can prepare my DPS while doing it. Fontaine characters also get that unique ability to dive out of the water. You know, Traveler gets it too, but I don't want to put Traveler in my party, and nor have I really wanted to put any of the Fontaine characters in my party. Linny is a great character and I enjoy using him, but his requirement of having 3 Pyro members in the party, himself included, is just a real bummer on overworld exploration. It's terrible for puzzles, it's terrible for diversity of actually dealing with elemental enemies, and I just don't enjoy him in the overworld at all. Neuvillette, on the other hand, has none of those problems. The only problem he has is that those little watery elemental bastards, they're a little bit of a pain in the ass for Neuvillette to deal with, especially because if you're playing a hyper carry team like I am, you just have to switch teams because you have no alternative. Reason number 9, he's just strong. Now, he may not be the most meta unit out there because a lot of characters that don't really rely or take advantage of reactions tend to be a little bit worse. You know, just look at every Animo and Geo character. The DPS, that is, you know, like Ito, Xiao, Wanderer. These are respectable DPS. They do well enough and they can clear any content that isn't directly countering them. But they're also not meta-shattering units like Hu Tao or Alhaitham. A big part of that is because they don't have reactions that bolster their damage. Hu Tao without vaping feels pretty bad. If you try to use Alhaitham as just raw Dendro damage like a mono Dendro team, well, that just doesn't really work out, partly because, you know, Kazuha doesn't buff him. Neuvillette, on the other hand, doesn't really rely on reactions at all. He relies on reactions to buff his own damage, but it's not the reactions themselves doing damage. And while you can run him in something like a Nilou team, although I don't think you should, or a Hyper Bloom, and that's just really Hyper Bloom doing a lot of the damage, he is still an insanely high source of just raw Hydro damage. One of my biggest personal draws to Ganyu was her ability to just walk into a camp and fire these cryo arrows that were doing insane amounts of damage for the time and just wipe the floor with the entire camp just entirely by herself. You could throw in Melt if you wanted to, but you didn't really need to. To me, Neuvillette is the first real successor we've had to Ganyu in that regard. A character that can just walk around in the overworld and just destroy a camp entirely by himself without needing any other reactions. It's not like we haven't had others. You know, Wanderer can just fly into a camp with his low cooldown skill infusion and just pick everything off one by one. Ayato can do the same thing, just with a little bit more AoE. Neuvillette just does it so well, you know, as long as there's not a Hydra enemy. Reason number 10, Constellations. Yeah, I know, I can hear you. Constellations are for whales. Who cares about a character's constellations? Well, there's also a lot of people out there who love a character so much that they save up to get them C6, even if they're free to play. I personally like it when a 5-star I enjoy has constellations I look forward to getting or hope to get one day. Neuvillette has quite an impressive spread. Everything but the C5 is pretty significant in one way or another. C1 is incredible utility and eases team building. C2 is a massive damage increase. C3, just like many other Fontaine characters, buffs his attack, which is basically all of his damage. C4 adds even more orbs on the ground, making his on-field presence even stronger, and goes into C6, which absorbs all your orbs to make one really long-lasting beam. I actually saved quite a bit for Wriothesley and Neuvillette, but I ended up liking Neuvillette so much that I just couldn't help but get that C3, and one day I hope to get that C6. And as a little bonus, it's hard to test this for sure in the overworld because of low HP pools, but his beam seems to ignore hilly turtle shields, which is a really nice little feature. Should they ever become prominent in the Abyss again, Neuvillette is going to feel great. You know, as if he doesn't feel great already, at least to me. So if you rolled for Neuvillette already and you're enjoying the character, tell me what you love about him, and maybe you were on the fence, and maybe this helped you decide whether or not you wanted him. I also understand that a lot of people probably do really want him, but they also really want Farina because she's just around the corner. And you know what? You're probably making the right call if you really had to make a choice, because come on, she's an Archon. I'm looking forward to her almost as much as I'm looking forward to getting my internet back. So thank you to you for watching. Thank you to my members and patrons for supporting me as always. Sorry for being gone for a week, and I'll see you in the next one.
Attaboy!